Like, wow, what
That
is
must
going
have
on here?
that must have felt pretty good the first time you won, huh?
Oh, I never won because the prosecutor says I need a break,
Oh.
and so the judge says I'll give you 15 minutes. So the prosecutor comes back and says, "Hey, judge, you can't rule on this. The prior judge already denied this motion." And then she opens the file and she looks in there. She goes, "Oh, you're right. Okay, next."
Oh.
So they railroaded me. Now you know how the former judge handled my exact same motion for personal jurisdiction? He just said denied. He just said denied. Okay, it's just a racket. It's just an absolute racket. I hope to go back and sue these guys for this because they're not allowed to do this. Now,
Mhm.
one of the most important premises of getting sucked into their system is this is what I do. For example, if I'm driving a car with no license, no plates for no registration. Now we're like at 14 for 14. 14 complete wins. No license, no registration, no insurance. And this is how we do it. We have a plate on the car that says no, not for hire. It says you can get on my website and look at the plates that we use.
Yeah.
Not for hire, uh, 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 personal property, household good, and I think we got another thing on the plate. But I personally have had like 11 cops and state patrollers follow me, and just to swerve around my car and down the interstate. And some of them have followed me up to 120 miles an hour trying to catch me and read that plate for another quarter mile, and they just turn around.
Wow. So they
But
they
anyway,
know.
oh well, the internet's starting to teach a lot of these cops that there's something to do to this not for hire.
Oh,
If you
okay.
go to the Nebraska statutes, which is going to be the same in every state, the first statute in Nebraska that brought in the motor vehicle code says right in it, this is for vehicles offered to the public for hire. It says it right in there. Now, what I do is we take a certified copy of that and we put it right into the record and give the court judicial notice on it. Last time I started to do that, I sent it to the court one day before they told me to show up. Next day, if I didn't have a license, I was going to go to jail. So I faxed him a 20-page brief on this. Basically told him what I was going to be putting into the record the next day. I walked into the courtroom. The judge put his hand out. He says, "Don't say one word, Mr. Hansen. Not one word. I'm done with you. Get out of here."
Huh.
He wouldn't even allow me to walk into the courtroom and put that stuff in as a judicial notice. He didn't want that.
He didn't want people to hear it.
Once he's given notice of the law, anybody can come in and say, "Hey, you were noticed back here in 2014 about the truth of the law. How come you haven't been following it? You've been noticed of it." So
Okay.
he was scared. Where's this going to go? Let's get this guy out of here. This is bad. Okay, but this is what I would do if I was driving down the road with no plates, and which I've been doing since close to 2009. Okay, I get pulled over. The cop, they ask for driver's license, registration, insurance. Just first thing you say to the officer, do you have any evidence of a for hire activity here? And most of the time they'll look at you in a blank stare. And I'm getting popular enough in town to where when they pull me over, they ask me who I am, and I just say Paul Hansen, and they just say, "Have a nice day, Mr. Hansen." They just walk away. And but and I live in a community of 1 million people, and when I go to the courthouse, it's weird. The sheriffs will walk up to me and say, "You know who resigned because of your challenges you're putting into court?" The head prosecutor. He's been here 19 years, and he resigned. And the next head prosecutor, we know you're going after him. He resigned too. I mean, these are the sheriffs
Wow.
walking up to me. I didn't even know these guys resigned. They're walking up to me and telling me that, the news down here is they're resigning because of you, all because of you. And we went after a guy in California. He resigned too when we went after him. And I talked to some of the friends of this guy that was the head prosecutor. He resigned on a pension of 125,000 a year. He told me, he said, "Who resigns at 19 years? When have you ever heard of somebody in good health resigning at 19 years?" So anyway, okay, so the officer's asking for the license, registration, insurance, driver's license. And let's say he ignores the question about And I always tell the officer to speak loud because it's being recorded and stored on my cloud. So they're just like looking at you like, well, what's this guy up to? And then when they ask me for those three things, I just say, is this activity, could it lead into a criminal, can I get jail time for any possible thing that you're investigating here? And the officer goes, yeah, possibly. He says, well, I have rights not to, Fifth Amendment says I don't have to incriminate myself. I don't want to give you anything that could be used against me in a court of law. So anyway, so they're looking at you. So that puts you, now I cover up the VIN number on the car. So they can't even run the VIN on the car. So they go, well, I want to see the VIN number. I said, do you have a warrant? Do you have a warrant? Do you have probable cause? Is there any evidence that I'm in a regulatable activity? See, that's when you can hand them this affidavit of sovereignty. I said, take this affidavit of sovereignty and take it back to and fax it into your supervisor. He should know this. And once you hand them a driver's license, you're giving them evidence that you're a regulatable entity. You're a United States citizen. You cannot get a driver's license in any 50 states, at least in the past. Now they changed it now in some states, without being a United States citizen, or at least a Social Security number, what I should say. Now these new immigrants are coming in, and they're actually getting driver's license without having a Social Security number, but they're passing some other kind of form of document to them. It says that they're signing a document. I assume that they're a resident in the United States. So that's the same as a U.S. subject. Any resident is the same as a U.S. subject. So you can get nailed on that term too. But anyway, the main thing is that here's a perfect example. One of the people that got stopped, and he didn't want to show the driver's license because even though he had one, he didn't want to show it because he kept asking the officer for regulatable activity. So they called that backup. Sheriff walked up to him and says, "Hey, Charlie, come on, just flash your driver's license. We'll let you go home. We've been here half an hour. Come on, don't you want to go home?" The guy says, "I just flash it and I can go home." Yeah,
Oh,
Sheriff
boy.
goes, "Yeah." So he flashes it, and they reach through the window and drug him right through the window.
Wow.
He just told him. He just told him that I'm a regulatable activity. See, if you do have a driver's license with you, which one of the guys I work with has won 7 of these tickets, never paid a fine. He has a driver's license and he does have plates on his car, and he still wins the cases because he's very good at law, and he says that they cannot run your VIN number or your the most important thing is your driver's license number without a probable cause, because that's a search.
Mm-hmm.
They can't search the records without probable cause. So he just basically wins the case. He just wears them down by they don't produce any probable cause. Now another thing you do is, okay, in that same scenario, you don't give the cop those 3 things. Take the 5th. And he says, "Well, I got to arrest you if you don't want to cooperate here." And you say, "Well, I don't agree to no detention or arrest." So then he arrests you, and immediately when you get down to the office, you keep when they're arresting you, you say, "Well, the first thing I want to see is a verified complaint. I want to see the arresting officer fill out a sworn complaint of my alleged violation, because on that complaint it has to say that it took place within the territorial jurisdiction of the written law, and it has to be applied to a proper person that's defined in the law, and it has to attach to a specific activity with location, activity, type of person." He has to swear to that. Now, once he swears to it and puts it into the public record, he's commercially liable. He don't want to do that. I had a judge email, and he says, "We used to do that, but they don't want to do that anymore. They'll do it on a felony, but they won't do it on tickets anymore. They won't do it." So anyway, I was in jail for I think 3 days once, and I kept demanding the verified complaint, and boom, they just let me out. Now remember, they had me in jail for 3 days, and they just let me out and dismiss the charges. No, they never do that. That's the last thing they want to do, right?
Right.
That's the last thing they want to do, because, boy, I got damages.
Mm-hmm.
So We've never found a verified complaint. Now, if you're in an area that you're on land where the written code applies, driver's license applies, and that you're a regulatable person, and that you're doing a regulatable activity, they'll probably put the paperwork together to properly prosecute you. Verified complaint. But that's not going to happen if you don't fulfill all three of those areas.
Right.
And now, and then another thing that chases them away is that we threaten to sue them for lack of promulgation of the law, because the law does not distinguish between a for-hire activity and a not-for-hire activity.
Hmm.
The legislature does, but the statutes don't. Now, the statutes are not law; they're just assumed to be law until otherwise rebutted.
Yeah. So policies, code, statutes aren't law.
They are not law. Nope. They're supposed to represent an accurate description of law, but they are not law. A judge never give a judge judicial notice of a statute or a code. You have to give them judicial notice of the legislative law.
Mm-hmm.
The judge even told me that. He says, Mr. Hansen, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I only really have to take judicial notice of law. And it's got to be a certified copy of it.
Wow.
So that's true, absolute notice to the judge. Now, once he's noticed of that, then he's commercially liable in his own personal capacity if he violates it. Now, he's not liable until he's given notice on the record. He doesn't have to know one single law to be liable until he is judicially noticed by a motion of judicial notice of written law, legislative written law.
Is that where you address him by saying "on your honor" or something like that?
Upon your oath of office.
Yeah, that's it.
No, don't go into any of that, because the only thing that stings these guys is a proper judicial notice of the written law.
Okay.
See, the term Constitution, each law constitutes specific elements. Territory, the person, the activity. Even the U.S. Constitution and the Articles of Confederation, Declaration of Independence, Northwest Ordinance, all four of those are actually constitutions. And the U.S. Code says every one of them is a constitution, all four of those. And they constitute three things. They constitute people, land, and law. Very important to understand.
Okay.
Paul, you've mentioned several times the affidavit of sovereignty. Now, when you file that with the court clerk, is that like absolving you of any connection to your birth certificate and your social security number, or what is exactly that affidavit doing?
Yes, that's what it does. It puts the burden of proof on them to prove otherwise, that you're not sovereign.
So even though I was issued a social security card and a birth certificate, when I file that affidavit of sovereignty, I've basically disavowed them. They no longer have anything to do with me.
Yep, because if they ask you, they have to ask you in the witness stand that if you're using a social security number.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't matter that one was issued, it's am I using it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because if let's say for example they give you a fishing license, it means nothing until you try to use it. It means nothing until you try to use it. Now a birth certificate, I don't understand all the aspects of a birth certificate, but that's more. And I don't understand it all, and it's not important. It never does come into play. Even though that prosecutor brought up the birth certificate, now if I claim the birth certificate as evidence of my relationship to the United States, they'll probably use it against me.
Right.
Because the relationship.
Right.
If I don't do that. Yeah. Now the Social Security number, that's the only person is supposed to have and don't worry about using the word person unless you're actually in a court setting. You can use person. Just define it the way you want to.
Okay.
Yeah, the only people that are supposed to have a Social Security number are those that are within the trust relationship that the U.S. system has established to deal with the bankruptcy and the people in the bankruptcy. They're the only ones that are supposed to have that number. Nobody else.
Okay. Something that you did mention, when you get pulled over, you'd say, your name, which is Paul Hansen. And because that name would appear on like those licenses or issued things that you'd voluntarily contracted with.
It's not. Let me jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
There's 13 Paul Hansens in Omaha, and there's several Paul John Hansens.